Friday, July 11th edition of PFT PM. Another week of hashtag no days off. 2 more weeks until PFT Live returns. July 28th, 7 a.m. Eastern on Peacock, Sirius XM 85. I got to get up early again. I still get up early. That's the problem. Yeah, I can sleep, but I don't. I sleep better when I know I have to be up at a certain time. When I've got a looser ability to set an alarm, it's a broader range, then my sleep is all crap. But you don't care. I barely care. I care about football, as do you. And one story that we had followed for most of the week, and I'm going to peel back the curtain a little bit. I'm going to tell you how the sausage is made just a little bit. I don't want to compromise any of my sources, but what happened was on Sunday, I got an email, got a tip from someone who knows someone at the Antioch, California Police Department. And this person said that Najee Harris was injured in a fireworks accident at some point over the weekend, and that it was going to come out. And that, as rumor had it, he had lost an eye in this fireworks accident. And this was right around bedtime on Sunday night. So here we go. Let's mobilize. Let's find out if there's anything to it, because that's what we're here for, to find news and bring you news. And if somebody's going to get it, we may as well get it. But for something like that, you got to nail it down before you even breathe a word of it. So I had my son start searching social media for any sign of a Najee Harris fireworks accident. And there were a couple of stray tweets that didn't get much traction. None of the news outlets were reporting it. So, and this is where I need to protect my sources, but I activated the process of trying to find out whether or not there was anything to it. And there's different things you do. And if you do this for a living, you know what they are. And it's not rocket science. It's not hard to figure out who you would try to contact if you're trying to find out what happened, if anything, to someone who plays in the NFL. And I kind of wanted to go to bed. It's like, well, I may have to stay up. I may have to write this story. That's fine. That's what we do. That's why we're here, yada, yada. And again, I don't want to blow anyone up here, but and that's no pun intended. That's how it came out. But I came to the conclusion, based upon people I trust, that everything's fine. Not injured. Someone was seriously injured, but it wasn't him. It was a friend of his. Not injured. So I said, fine, I'm going to monitor this. Because it's one of those where you trust your little, when you get in touch with people and they don't get back to you, it's like something's going on here. And, the spider sense was telling me there was something to it. But you give people the benefit of the doubt. When they say he's fine, this is fine, that will be fine. Fine. Well, then as the week unfolded, I kept seeing stray little things, and I'm thinking, maybe something to this. And it was yesterday, Cam Inman of the San Jose Mercury News reported that Harris was injured. No word on the severity. Agent had no comment, yada, yada. So I reactivated the process of trying to find out what the hell happened. And that's when one thing leads to another. We get the statement, and the statement was submitted to multiple media outlets explaining that a superficial eye injury was suffered by Najee Harris as a result of a fireworks incident on the July 4 weekend. It was technically early on the morning of the 5th when this happened. There were other injuries. Apparently, a friend of Najee Harris's was critically injured in the mishap. And from the team's perspective, and again, I got to protect my sources, but I think the team's attitude is pretty simple. We don't know what happened. We don't know if he's injured, but we know this. Players report to training camp next week, and he'll have a physical, and we'll find out if he's healthy. We'll find out if he's injured. I don't know what a superficial eye injury is. Any injury to the eyeball would not seem to me to be superficial, but we'll find out. That'll be the next step in this. Will he pass the physical and be cleared to practice? Will he be put on the physically unable to perform list? Actually, it would be the non-football injury list because this is a non-football injury. It's as non-football as it gets. The statement said he'll be ready for the season, and implicit in that, potentially, if we're going to parse words, maybe he won't be ready right away. Maybe he'll miss some training camp. We don't know any of that. And we just sit back and wait at this point. There's nothing we can do. I heard this from a couple of different sources. This didn't come from the statement. This didn't come from the agent, but from other people in the know. I think that there may be some potential liability concerns at play here that may have prompted people to be very careful about what they said early on. So, look, I'm not upset. It happens. We're only as good as the information we get. And unless we were there, we don't know what the hell happened early on. And we didn't report anything on it. We didn't report it. We didn't say he wasn't injured. Part of it was, if he's not injured, it's not a story. But part of it also was, I just kind of had I don't know, maybe he is injured. And sometimes those instincts can keep you from creating a story and a link that is factually incorrect. So we waited, and ultimately what we're told on the record by his agent, Doug Hendrickson, superficial eye injury for Najee Harris. We'll find out what superficial means when he has his scheduled physical next week when he reports for training camp. Okay. Yesterday's show and my life for the past couple of days dominated by someone finally. The good news is someone finally is advancing the ball on the NFLPA collusion craziness. Bad news is someone's advancing the ball on it, which means a couple of things for me. And I'm not asking for your pity, but this is supposed to be the slow time. There is no slow time. Okay, let me tell you a secret. There's no slow time. And don't tell NBC, but they don't need to shut the show down for 6 weeks. It's funny because we were talking about coming back on the 21st, and my partner for 4 days a week, 2 days a week during football season. At some point, he's really not my partner anymore. During football season, he's just kind of part-time. But Chris said, what the hell are we going to talk about the week of the 21st? There's not going to be anything to talk about. Hey, Christopher, there's always something to talk about. And this NFLPA collusion situation where they file the grievance, they get a partial win, they generate some real evidence of actual collusion, they bury everything. The thing that really took it to a new level, the reporting that Lloyd Howell, the executive director of the NFLPA, has a side gig as a paid consultant with a private equity fund that just so happens to receive clearance from the NFL to be one of the few private equity funds that can buy minority interests in NFL franchises. It's ridiculous when you think about it, that this guy hasn't already been told to pack his stuff and leave. So what I noticed today, because there's a lot going on, and on top of what you're seeing at PFT and what you're hearing about from me here, my phone's blowing up with different people. And look, different people have different agendas. There are folks who simply want to share the information with me because they appreciate the work we're doing. They have access to information. That's good. Then there are people who see this as an opportunity to advance their own agendas. And I've made it clear to anyone that's trying to get me to get behind. Look, I'm not playing Game of Thrones here. I don't care at the end of the day who's in charge of the union. And I'm not going to align myself with someone and then have favors owed. No, I'm not playing that game. I care about the truth. I care about the players. I care about the players being properly represented. And my concern is they're not, because, and call me old, because I am, call my concepts outdated, but I keep coming back to the very simple proposition that Lloyd Howell is paid more than $3 million per year to be the executive director of the National Football League Players Association. That's a full-time job. It's full-time pay. Why does he even need to have a part-time job with a private equity fund? Why? I mean, why wasn't that a deal breaker from the get-go? Well, I'd like to take the job as executive director of one of the most important sports unions in America, but it's very important that I continue to do my part-time job with a private equity fund where I consult on defense and aerospace issues. Is that okay? The answer should have been No. And even if it was okay at the time, the moment that the Carlyle Group is authorized to join a very short list of private equity funds that are permitted to purchase minority interest in NFL franchises, that's the moment that Lloyd Howell needs to stand down. And it shouldn't be a matter of discussion and debate and consideration and vetting. He should have the moral compass, frankly, and I don't like to say that because everyone has their own decisions they have to make about how they're going to live their life. But I'd like to think that someone who is entrusted with running the most important sports union in America would know instinctively, I probably shouldn't do this. And I hate to give up the money. I hate to give up the spot. I like the work. I like the people. But at some point, you got to pick a lane. We said it about Tom Brady all year. He's got to pick a lane between being broadcaster at Fox and part owner of the Raiders. And as Miles Simmons put it so well last year, if Brady truly is committed to being the best he can be at everything he does, it's impossible to be the absolute best broadcaster and the absolute best owner. You can't do it. And of course, when you say that, you eventually have, I'm not going to go down that path, but I got called out. Like, it's not your business to bullshit. Sorry, Alexa. It is my business to comment on the things I see and the things I have opinions about. So just as a practical matter, Lloyd Howell never should have been hired until he gives up his side job or side jobs. And the moment the side job becomes a potential conflict of interest, that's when he should walk away. And this is all a precursor to me calling out The Athletic and the New York Times. I expect more from the New York Times. And I know that sounds like an insult, but it's also a compliment. Like, I've spent my whole life thinking the New York Times adheres to a certain standard. But what I saw today, and I'm sorry in advance to the people who wrote the story, to the people who edited the story, the people who thought this was an appropriate thing to post. I have no journalism training, so maybe I'm wrong. But the item that landed today felt like an effort to help the union circle the wagons around Lloyd Howell, because they granted anonymity to sources who are clearly pushing the pro-Howell agenda. And anytime I have someone who wants me to go with something where it's obvious the thing they want me to go with helps them in some way, I have a very simple position. If you don't go on the record, I'm not using it. I'm not going to give you anonymity for what feels like PR. The article posted by The Athletic / New York Times feels like pro-union PR. If you parse through the language, if you look at it carefully, it feels like something that they're doing as a favor to someone. And what makes it odd is they were asleep at the switch for 2.5 weeks on the whole collusion thing. So an outlet that was paying no attention to the fact that the NFL got a partial win, NFLPA got a partial win, and I guess the NFL did too. The NFLPA hid the decision for reasons we still don't understand. And now all of a sudden they show up with a piece that seems to be pro-Lloyd Howell. It's just weird. And I can't remember exactly what I said at the end of the story. It's just disappointing. At a time when our standards have been eroded, the New York Times is contributing to the legitimization and normalization of the idea that certain conflicts of interest are okay. Oh, the union decided it's not an actual conflict of interest. Well, so what? Because it is a conflict of interest. Because Lloyd Howell needs to be able to take that collusion ruling and beat the NFL over the head with it and become a problem, become an irritant, become a constant pain in the ass for the NFL and the commissioner. And the point I made today, because the final ruling was the arbitrator concluded that the NFL Management Council, with the blessing of the commissioner, urged teams to collude on guaranteed pay for players. Lloyd Howell should have had a press conference the day that thing came out, and he should have used all his rhetorical skills to argue for the commissioner to be fired. I'm not saying before you call anyone at NBC 345, I'm not saying that is the proper outcome. I'm saying if Lloyd Howell is solely concerned about representing his players, that's a plausible way to proceed with this. Well, when you've got this side gig with a company that's on the short list of approved private equity funds to purchase a minority interest in NFL team, better tread lightly. Yeah, I better exercise my discretion in a way that keeps that phone call from happening. That you shouldn't have those on your radar screen if you're Lloyd Howell. You have one duty to the players, one obligation to zealously represent them. And because, one of his big arguments was, well, D. Smith wants to fight too much. He wants to litigate too much. I want to try to do deals. Hey, when the deal-making process, when it gets to the very end and you can't reach a deal, and the owners will shut down the sport for a season and the players won't miss a game check, you have an imbalance that you need to rectify elsewhere. It's all the more reason to sue. It's all the more reason to use PR. It's all the more reason to go after them any way you can, because when push comes to shove through traditional collective bargaining, they will shut down the sport and you won't, which means you will take the best offer they put on the table before they shut down the sport, which means you use anything and everything else you can to try to leverage them into giving you what you want. It's pretty simple. So I don't know what's going to happen. There was a time late yesterday afternoon, early evening, where it felt like the momentum was going toward Lloyd Howell being out and an interim executive director being named. As of this morning, my understanding is it's going to take a lot longer. Not a lot longer, but longer. It's not going to happen quickly. There is a procedure in the NFLPA Constitution for removing the executive director. It may come to that, it may not. The sense I get, and this is what's unfortunate, because this is a corollary to apathy being weaponized against the players. I said the league has been doing it for years, and union leadership, in my opinion, over the last 2 years has been doing it. The players don't care, and hey, if they don't care, let's take advantage of them. The cousin to that is knowing how to push the buttons of the players, that when there's an attack from the outside, you get them suspicious about whoever on the outside is saying something. There's a conspiracy out there. Somebody's up to something. It's us against them. We need to circle the ranks. We need to protect ourselves. They're criticizing you. By criticizing us, they're criticizing you. And it's a lot of stuff we see in the political world now. Oh, let's stick to sports. But I feel like that's part of this game. They've managed to neutralize, at least for now, the threat by getting key players on board with the idea that someone's up to something, that this isn't about anything we've done. Someone out there is up to something, and we can't let them succeed. And I'll tell you right now, and if you don't want to believe me, I really don't care. I care about the players. I care about the players being properly represented. As I said yesterday, I believe, and who the hell knows, it all melts together. If people are going to say, hey, you should be grateful to the NFL because you cover their sport and that's how you make your living. Well, I'm equally grateful to the players because they're the ones who go out there and play the game. They're the ones who put their bodies and their brains and their lives on the line. And somebody needs to be standing up for them because I believe, it's my opinion, their current union leadership isn't. By virtue of the simple fact that the executive director has a conflict of interest that he chooses to ignore, and that player leadership at the NFLPA has chosen to allow to continue to exist. And for the average member of the rank and file, that is a significant disservice. Dan Wetzel has a great column at ESPN.com that I was reading before we got started today. Who's the NFLPA working for? Whose side are they on? I'm on the players' side as it relates to ensuring that they have proper representation, because I know the league is fine. The league is fine. They don't need help. You got a collection of oligarchs, and they know how to get what they want. There's an imbalance because, again, push comes to shove, they'll shut the sport down because they got the money to shut the sport down, and they're going to own the teams for years into the future. The players have a finite number of seasons they can play football. They're not going to give up a season to do it. The league knows it. The players need someone who will fight the league. And it may be David and Goliath, but they need a David. They need a David who isn't distracted. They need a David who isn't compromised. They need a David who doesn't have some backdoor dealings with the Philistines. And they don't have it right now. All right. One reason they need to have a fighter is it's inevitable there's going to be 18 games. Now, the players can either agree to it between now and 2030, or they can take a lockout through the offseason and eventually cry uncle and not miss a game, not miss a game check, and accept an 18-game regular season. It's coming. It's clearly coming. Patrick Mahomes, interviewed by CNBC Sport, said he's not a big fan of 18 games, but if it's going to happen, there should be an extra bye week. That echoes something that Joe Burrow, the Bengals quarterback, has said in the past. And hey, I'm all for that. I just don't think the league is. I think the league's position is going to be 18 games, one bye. And here's why. They've got this fascination, as do many fans, and maybe this is why the league is embracing it. President's Day weekend Super Bowl. If you add another game, most of your Super Bowls are going to land on President's Day weekend. Now, the thing they don't point out, there's like 3 or 4 over the next 20, 25 years that land on President's Day weekend under the current schedule. Never mind that. More often than not, an 18-game season with one bye week based on a season beginning the weekend after Labor Day, it takes you to President's Day weekend. Far more often than not, that's what they want to do. If you add a second bye, then you got a problem. You're going to overshoot President's Day weekend. Or you got to start on Labor Day weekend. And that gets back to a point that I've made in the past. You know, after 2001, they got out of the Labor Day business because people aren't home. People aren't watching sports. People are out having one last moment of summer before reality sets in until the holidays roll around. I think that would be different in today's reality. Everyone's carrying around their TVs. Football is bigger than it was in 2001. Everybody's got their fantasy team. Everybody's got Sunday ticket, or not everybody, because they deliberately overprice it so people don't do it. But some way, somehow, you're going to have access on your phone to what's happening in the NFL, and they can roll those numbers up and they'll get the ratings they want, and they can do it if they want to. But that's the other side of this. I agree. If the players believe they need a second bye week, it's worth considering. I just don't think the NFL is going to want to do it unless they're willing to start playing on Labor Day weekend again. And maybe at some point they have to start before Labor Day weekend, because I think 18 isn't the end. I don't think it ends until there's 20. It may not be in my lifetime, but I'll be somewhere nodding when they finally go to 20 games, unless I'm, not swimming in a lake of fire for all eternity, which is possible. This is something I saw before we got started as well. Doug Whaley, the former GM of the Steelers, who was an executive there for years. No, he's GM of the Bills. He was an executive with the Steelers, working with Kevin Colbert, who was the GM of the Steelers. Whaley went on. Yeah, he wasn't the GM. I misspoke. He was the director of pro scouting or something like that. But he was in the building. He knew what was going on. He made a comment recently that in 2005, as Aaron Rodgers, now the quarterback of the Steelers, was plummeting through round 1, the Steelers were considering taking him if he had made it all the way down to number 30. Obviously, 6 spots earlier, Packers took him at 24. But Rodgers was in that free fall, and Rodgers was a potential number 1 overall pick. He wanted to be the number 1 overall pick. He wanted to go to the 49ers. They went with Alex Smith instead. Steelers took Heath Miller at number 30. The bigger picture is, man, that would have been awkward. Ben Roethlisberger was taken 11th overall the year before. And there was a 20-year gap between Terry Bradshaw and Ben Roethlisberger, where the Steelers didn't win a Super Bowl. Now, they were competitive, but they didn't have a franchise quarterback. And I remember old days of PFT, 2002, 2003 timeframe, arguing the Steelers need to prioritize finding their next franchise quarterback. This 20-year revolving door of guys who aren't Terry Bradshaw, it's not good enough. That would have been something. Roethlisberger 1 year, Rodgers the next year. Who would have emerged as the long-term option? Presumably one of them gets traded. That would have been a mess. They won the Super Bowl in 2005 with Ben Roethlisberger, so, I guess it worked out. But if you remember Super Bowl 40, many would say the officials had a lot more to do with the Steelers winning that game than Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger did not have a good game in Super Bowl 40. Yes, in Super Bowl 43, arguably should have been the MVP. Santonio Holmes was. 40? No. Roethlisberger did not have a good Super Bowl 40. And who knows? All things equal, who knows? Who knows how many Super Bowls the Steelers might have won if they'd taken Aaron Rodgers in 2005. Obviously, they didn't get the chance because he went 6 spots earlier. All right, a couple of questions before we wrap up for the week. Arizona UK, our good friend Tom Marshall. Were the other owners quietly content that the Browns gave Deshaun Watson a guaranteed contract and that it created a bar that would not be overcome? Look, they were upset at first because the concern was this is going to spread. That was the background for the effort to collude. We've managed to fend off fully guaranteed contracts through 2 separate CBA negotiations. Players asked for them, we said no, and we didn't give in. Now the Browns are gladly giving a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson. We can't have that. We got to stop this. That was the impetus for the whole effort to collude, and I frankly believe actual collusion. But because Watson ended up being the last guy who should have gotten a fully guaranteed contract, it does make it easier moving forward to say we're not doing it. If Watson had lived up to every penny of that deal, man, franchise quarterbacks get fully guaranteed contracts. And I go back to, it's been at least 10, 15 years ago. A prominent agent at the time told me, if you're truly a franchise quarterback, you don't need a fully guaranteed contract because you're not going to get cut. I mean, Peyton Manning did after he had 4 neck surgeries and the Colts were in position to draft the next Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, although that didn't quite work out. And then Manning has his pick of teams. They lined up out the door when he was coming off of the 4 neck surgeries. So franchise quarterbacks tend to stay franchise quarterbacks. You don't need fully guaranteed contracts if you're a franchise quarterback. That's the other side of this. And that conversation came up because between guarantees and dollars, and I've since had that conversation with other agents, guarantees and dollars, I'll take the dollars because I'll get more dollars. If less of it's fully guaranteed, I'll get more dollars, and I'm not worried about it not being fully guaranteed. Go ahead and cut me. Someone else will sign me because I'm a franchise quarterback. So it worked out well for the league that Watson was the absolute worst candidate for a fully guaranteed contract. And then came Russell Wilson, who believed he had a fully guaranteed contract or something close to it. He got cut with a huge chunk of money owed to him in 2024. The Broncos did it in early 24 to avoid another fully guaranteed massive chunk of money, $40 million or close to it in 2025. Another example of a guy who got a big contract with a lot of guarantees who shouldn't have gotten it. J14 Mitchell, do you think the fallout from the collusion grievance could also result in maybe having a separate quarterback salary cap that would maybe allow more guaranteed money to other positions that otherwise wouldn't get it because not a QB? Look, no, there is no fallout from the collusion grievance, not unless the union wins the appeal and then ultimately gets a massive financial recovery from the league. Nothing's going to change. The league has won. The current status quo is what we're doing is working, and the league's not going to change anything with the way the salary cap operates. Now, they may try to change the funding. I firmly believe that when the next CBA is done, they're going to try to get the union to abandon getting 50 cents on every dollar by saying, hey, we have to pay all the costs out of our end, and these costs are going up and up and up. And, 50 cents on the dollar as the revenue goes up, you guys are getting a great deal here. How about a fixed number for the salary cap for the next 10 years? How about that? So I don't think the NFL is going to change anything other than trying to give the players a smaller piece of the pie, because the pie's grown to the point where you look at it and say, if you're the owners, we're giving them a lot of pie. Next from Rutgers Jets, as training camps begin to open over the next 2 weeks, how big of an issue will it be that 30 of the 32 second-round picks remain unsigned? That's a great question because, and this is the next frontier in the battle over fully guaranteed contracts, that to the extent there's collusion on that issue, the Texans stepped out of line by giving Jaden Higgins, the second pick in round 2, a fully guaranteed contract. Previously, the full guarantees for the rookies ended at round 1. And it had progressed from 20 or 21 when they first started with the current rookie wage scale in 2011. The first 20 players or thereabouts got fully guaranteed contracts. And then it was less than full. It was a percentage, and the percentage got lower and lower the lower you were drafted. Now, everybody in round 1 gets a fully guaranteed contract, and the first 2 players in round 2. The question is, from 30 to 32 in round 2, everyone's unsigned. How far is this dynamic going to spread? What percentage, how does this reconfigure the percentage of full guarantees for everyone else? And at some point, a player's just going to have to say, give me the deal that's on the table. Now, it'll probably be somebody lower in the round, and it'll maybe work its way up. But there's at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's going to be a tug of war over this question of, will the full guarantees continue? And it's going to take a team to say, no way, no how. We're not going to fully guarantee it. That's it. And that'll be the dividing line. And the player needs to sign that deal. Once that's done, then you know where everybody else falls. So it's going to be a potential mess. And it's kept 30 guys from signing. It doesn't matter until training camps open, because all those guys participated in the offseason program. Once training camp opens, they won't be participating without contracts. We'll see if that works out. And I need to do some more work on. I need to look at last year's round 2 and see what the percentages were, what we're talking about by way of difference, how we can bridge this gap, and maybe we can get these deals done. Not that I care generally, but if we could offer a solution that maybe would be adopted, then it looks like we have, a little bit of influence and or know what we're talking about, which is a rarity indeed. Okay. Wasp 49, do you think eventually every cold weather team will have a dome stadium? No, because the Bills are opening a new stadium that isn't domed. So no, that's an easy answer. Now, the Browns, yes. Chicago, they want a dome stadium. The Chiefs, if they choose Missouri over Kansas City, won't have a dome stadium. If they choose Kansas, they will. All of these venues, all of these owners want to have facilities that can host events all year long. That's the key. You make more money that way. That's what's driving it. And we've seen teams systematically, going back to the Vikings when they opened the Metrodome, giving up their home field advantage for a building that can have a Super Bowl. Dome stadium, if you've got the infrastructure with the hotel spaces and the convention center and all that, dome stadium is going to get you a Super Bowl. I don't think they have it in Cleveland. They definitely have it in Chicago. They probably have it in Kansas City. That's another reason for teams to try to do it. But yeah, gone are the days, or at least rare the days will be, of the football spinning slowly, just slightly off of a perfect spiral while snowflakes fall around it. NFL films with the music playing and John Facenda and or Harry Callis speaking, that's gone. Denver, I thought of Denver too, because we've had some snow games in Denver. And in Denver, you never know what it's going to do any day of the year. They're looking at a new stadium too. I don't know whether it'll be domed or not, but all these owners, most of them, seem to want dome stadiums. Matt YC1763, what level of success would North Carolina need this season in order to persuade NFL teams to consider Bill Belichick as a head coaching candidate? I think back to 2023. We were talking, I was talking about Deion Sanders as an NFL candidate when he started 3-0 at Colorado. Now, there's some stuff that Bill Belichick needs to undo, but we have goldfish brains. We do not remember things. We focus on what's happening now. And all that crazy stuff from the CBS Sunday morning interview and Jordan Hudson, that's all died down. If Bill Belichick starts kicking ass and taking names in Carolina blue, there's going to be a different vibe. You still need an NFL team that wants him. And I thought the Buccaneers were the best candidate. They've extended Todd Bowles. They're off the list. I don't know what NFL team would do it, but if he comes out and reconfirms to everyone that he is the best game day head coach football has ever seen, and I believe that, and people in the league believe that, if he can prove that, if he can go 10-2, 8-4, 9-3, get a major bowl game, if he can do that, that's how you get people to forget the things that caused Bill Belichick to fall off the NFL's radar screen. Last one. Is this the last one? Let me see. Let me make sure it's the last one. It is the last one. B-roll 12. Do you ever see the NFL playing several games a year in Hawaii? We could have late Sunday night games. It could be a whole package that comes on after you guys are on NBC. Who remembers? Raise your hand if you, and I'm watching. Raise your hand if you remember the Sunday night that there was a Chargers-Raiders game that started at like 11:30 or 12 o'clock Eastern time. You remember that? They did it one time. You know why they didn't do it again? Nobody watched it. If people would watch, they would do it. If they could make money off of it, they would do it. Could you imagine on a regular basis the football marathon that begins at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning and ends at 3 a.m. Eastern on Monday morning? That is a lot of football. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible windows. That is finding ways to cram cheese into the crust of a pizza. If they could make money doing it, they would do it. So I don't see that happening. Games that are going to be played on a neutral site are going to be played internationally. Roger Goodell this week on CNBC made it clear they want 16 games. That's one of the things they're going to demand from the union, because right now the league is maxed out at 10. They haven't done 10 yet. They want to get to 16, and they will, just like they'll get to 18, and they will, and then they get to 19. And then, while I'm running from the pitchfork, I'll hear that the NFL is finally playing 20 games, and I'll be able to say I was right just before, I'm thrown back into the lake of fire. Have a great weekend. We'll be posting all weekend long, as we do at PFT. We'll be back on Monday with a new edition of PFT PM. As always, thanks for some of your time. Stay safe, stay smart, stay engaged with PFT, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.